Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Tribe tutorial. Today we're going to talk about the basic skill of setting up your LEI kitesurfing kite. So the three pieces of equipment that we need for today's tutorial is a pump, a bar, nice kite bar, and a kite. So here today what we're going to use is a 9-meter slingshot rally. When we're setting our kite up, the first thing we do is actually pump the kite itself. The bar and lines are essentially the dangerous part of the kite, the bit that people can trip over on the beach, and so we want to leave that till last when we're setting the kite up, and also it should be the first thing you pack away when you come off the water. So as I said, the first thing we do is to start off with this kite, and we're just going to get it out the bag. So I'm just going to undo the zip here. Packed away nice and neatly. Dispose my bag for a second. And as you can see, the kite's neatly folded up into 3 parts. I'm just going to unravel the kite by holding the leading edge and just let the kite flap out downwind of me. And then I'm going to shake the kite out into the wind, downwind of me, sorry, with my back to the wind. The first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to come to the center of the kite. We don't want to worry about anything else at this point. I'll illustrate to you all the different parts once we've got the kite pumped up. We're going to come to the center of the kite here, and we're going to find all the different valves and pump the kite up. First of all, we have our deflate valve, and actually with this kite it even tells you what it is. Make sure that you put this in nice and firmly. And I know it sounds like common sense, but it is a part of the kite that you want to check before you get out on the water. Make sure this valve is nice and flush with its bottom half. We're going to pull the Velcro over the top and make sure that's nice and secure. With this brand slingshot, the deflate valve is in the center. Just be careful with your brand of kite that you don't also have a deflate valve on the wingtip, because you could be pumping your kite up for a very long time. So always check to make sure that deflate valve is in. We're also just going to quickly talk about what we call the one pump system. Now this kite has 3 struts, which I'll illustrate to you later on. But you can see those struts are connected to the front of the kite, this leading edge, via this orange hose, and they all pump up through one main valve here. Now, in order to pump the kite up, I need to come to my pump, and with my pump, you'll see I have a nice leash, and that leash is just going to connect to the kite. There's normally a little loop. With this one, it's behind the deflate valve. I'm going to secure that to the kite, and that's great because it means we don't have to rely on someone to hold our kite when we pump it. We're just going to give the pump a couple of pumps to get any sand out the hose, and we're just going to simply screw that on to the kite like so to secure it. And off we go, start pumping the kite. Just make sure the kite's nice and tidy on the beach, and it's going to pump up nice and tidily as I start to apply air to the kite. And here we go, the warm-up of the day, pumping your kite up. Now this pump's great because it has a massive capacity, so we can pump our kites up quite quickly with this one. So just getting the last bits of air in the kite now. And we want to pump our kite up to about 8-9 psi. The brands generally tend to recommend a certain pressure, but these gauges last about 5 minutes on the beach, so the best thing to do is the ping test. You should be able to flick the kite and it should ping like a drum. So you can hear that today. That's nice and solid. What we're being careful of here is I disconnect all the pump, disconnect the hose, I make sure I keep securing the kite with my hands as I put the cap back on the inflate valve there. What we're trying to make sure when we're pumping our kite up is that the kite is going to hold its structure. You can see as I push down this kite onto the beach here, it's not bending very easily, and that's what we want to ensure that if the kite ever crashes, it's going to hold its structure in the water. So at this point, I'm going to talk you through the different names of the different parts of the kite. One of the fundamental things to remember when you're flying a kite is, when you're handling a kite, is you're always going to handle the kite by the leading edge, this big, long, inflatable tube that goes along the front of the kite. So this is called the leading edge, and whenever you're handling it, it's one person, one point of contact, and always by the leading edge. I can't stress that enough. On the leading edge, we have a very simple bridle system, similar to the one on the foil kite you will have seen in an old video. And this is, as I said, it's much more simple than you have on a foil kite. And this is where our front lines or power lines connect to the kite. There's one of these on each side. So I turn to this side here, you can see one on my left-hand side here as well. And these are the lines that you're actually physically connected to. These are the ones that go to your harness. We then have 3 struts on this kite. Some kites have 5, some kites have 1, some kites have none. It just depends from brand to brand, model to model of the kite you're using, and it just changes the characteristics of the kite. As I said, this one, as you can see, we've got 3. And these struts have a nice little clip on this orange hose we talked about earlier. You can hear that as I push it together. And what that does is it secures the air between the strut and the leading edge. Now this is a great little safety feature just in case you have a puncture or a leak in the kite. So I just want to make sure I go along and secure all 3 struts to make sure that the chambers are closed. As I come to the end of the kite here where the kite the leading edge starts to square off, this part of the kite we call the wingtip. And on the wingtip we have what we call a pigtail where our steering lines connect to the kite. Now this one over here, as you can see my hand is white because this illustrates the right side, and then you probably guessed it already, but over on the left hand side of the kite, the pigtail over here is indicated by a red colour. This back line of the kite, this thicker dacron material we call it the trailing edge of the kite that runs to the back of the wingtip to the other wingtip. I point this out because it's very important to be aware that we never handle the kite by this area. It's really important just to stress again that when you're handling the kite, it's one point of contact and by the leading edge. When I'm storing my kite on the beach, I'm going to flip the kite over so the leading edge is resting on the ground. And to do this, it's very simple. You're going to put one hand in the middle and flip the kite so one of the wingtips is touching the ground. Keep walking over so the other wingtip touches the ground. I'm going to let the kite fall forward into the wind. So this middle strut here is pointing straight into the wind, and so the wind pushes down on the kite and into the ground. You can see here the kite is sitting slightly off the beach, and some models tend to do that. It just depends on the design of the kite. But regardless of the kite itself, we want to make sure we weigh it down to the beach. So I'm going to take a couple of handfuls of sand and just throw those on top of the kite to secure it to the beach. That way we know our kite's not going to blow away. You can also use a bag with some rocks in it if you're on a rocky beach, or even a nice sandbag just to secure the kite to the beach. Now we've got our kite set up, we're going to start setting up our bar and lines. And as I said earlier, this is the last thing that we want to do before we get out on the water. When you're setting the bar and lines, there's always been a big debate of if we should do them upwind or downwind of the kite. And I'm a firm believer that downwind is the safest and most practical way of setting your lines to the kite. So that's what we're going to do today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the end of the lines, and you'll see they're wrapped around the end of the bar here, and just start unraveling the lines off the bar and walking downwind of the kite and down the beach, away from the kite. I'm just going to pop the lines under the canopy of the kite here so they don't blow down the beach behind me on a windy day, and I'm going to walk down the beach, feeding these lines off the bar as I go, making sure I keep them nice and tidy. Try to refrain from doing this sort of action, trying to get the lines off the bar because it tends to get in a mess. Do try and make sure you've got all 4 lines and you're feeding the lines off the bar nice and neatly. It's going to make for an easier process to unravel the lines, to walk through the lines when you get the twists out them in a moment. So now we've unraveled our lines, we've got the bar in our hands, and as we said earlier on, we've got red on the left and white on the right hand side. However, because the kite is flipped upside down on the beach, we need to remember to turn the bar upside down when we're walking through the lines that connect them to the kite. So I'm going to pop this down the beach with the red on the right, and we're going to stand with the lines between our legs and outside our legs to push all the twists out of the lines so that we've got nice tidy lines when we connect them to the kite. As I'm walking through here, I'm checking for any knots, any snags, any wear and tear in the lines that might cause them to be weak and to snap potentially. It's really important to make sure you've got no knots. One knot will reduce the strength of the lines by at least 60%, so very important to get any knots out of the lines before you get on the water. And just one other extra tip that I'd like to give people, try and refrain from putting the lines apart, but actually better to push them forward with one hand so that the twists are getting pushed towards the end rather than tightening the twist by putting them apart. Now I've got to the end here, I'm just going to space these lines out nice and evenly, get a nice clear division between all the lines. So I've got 2 central lines here. I'm going to place them nice and wide in the middle. I've got an outside line. I'm going to put that over here, and I've got another outside line here, or a steering line as it's also known as, and we're going to go nice and wide over here. That way I can see that everything correlates to its corresponding connection point. And one of the great things with these slingshot kites is everything's color coordinated. We've got red to red here, we've got white to white on the other side, and then we have 2 gray connection points in the middle for the center lines. And to connect the lines to the kite, it's very straightforward. We've got a loop sewn into the end of the line, and we're just going to pass this loop over the top of itself. We've got a nice thick bit of webbing here. We're just going to push that through itself and create what we know as a lark's foot or a lark's head knot. I'm going to take the knot here, I'm going to put the loop over the top of the knots and pull it tight. And in this instance, I'm going to put it on the middle knot. Once I've done this outside line, I'm going to walk to the other side and do the other outside line. So I'm going to come this side here. And here I've got another one, again, to show you that again for reference, push that over the top of itself. And whatever I do on that side, I must do on this side. So I'm going to put it again, I'm going to put it on the second knot like so. Pull that nice and tight, and that will be nice and secure. As you can see here, you've got knots on the kite and loops on the line. And as I come to the center lines, you'll notice it's the other way around. I've got a knot on the line and a loop on the kite. What we also want to check for here is that our bridle is nice and tidy. This is a very simple system, this bridle here, so it doesn't get tangled very easily. But we just want to make sure we've got some nice shapes in here. All the triangles are nice and tidy. We've got no knots and tangles. And then, as I said, this time the loop is on the kite and the knot is on the line. And again, with the front lines here, I'm going to do it to the second knot. That way the kite's going to fly nice and level in the sky. We'll talk about kite control and kite trimming in a later video, but as you can see, whatever I do on the right hand side of the kite, I need to do on the left hand side of the kite. The front and back can be different, but that's for another video in the future. The best thing that I always advise is just always put it on the middle knot, and you'll tend to find your kite flies quite effectively that way. So now we've got our kite set up, the lines are connected, the kite's pumped up, it's almost time to get on the water. But before we head out, it's really important just to do one more final or two more final pre-flight checks. The easiest way of doing that is picking up your outside lines and just walking back down towards the bar, because you've got to go back there anyway to hook yourself in. So why not double check the work that you've done to ensure that the lines aren't twisted and tangled. There's also one more as we get down to the bar here. The second pre-flight check that we can do is, because we're downwind of the kite, there is no risk of the kite taking off if we pick up the bar. And as you can see here, as I pick up the outside lines, I can see that they're independent of the middle lines, and I know my kite's going to fly effectively without any tangles in the lines. Thanks again for coming in to watching another one of our tribe tutorials. These videos should be used as a reference rather than a replacement for kitesurfing lessons. So please remember, if you are going to take up kitesurfing, do go with a qualified kitesurfing instructor or an approved kitesurfing school, such as our own Tribe Watersports here in Watamu. Thanks again, as I said, for coming in to watch the video today. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this in the future, subscribe. And if you have any questions at all, we always answer the comments below. So please leave any questions there. See you on the beach.